Sorry. No, I'm a big fan of that song too. So there's at least two opinions of a favoring opinion for Natalie Imbruglia.
So considering there's three of us in the studio, me, myself, and you.
Yeah, and myself and I.
Everyone here likes that.
All of us do. So.
Okay, we've had some great conversations here. What I would call not tangents, but tentacles more in the world of insurance. Well, no, I mean, the things that you don't talk about or even think about much, but it's good to bring them up. And a lot of our conversations have lately revolved around other people operating somebody else's motor vehicle. I want to continue that thread a little bit, okay?
We can.
All right.
We can.
So with an insurance policy, now I live alone. I don't have anybody that I would add to my insurance. But back in the day when my son was learning how to drive and stuff like that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
We had to put his name on it. And I think that's called disclosed drivers. Is that right?
Yeah, household members, list-only drivers, or disclosed drivers. It depends on how you would have put your son on at the time.
Okay. It's been over 15 almost 20 years.
Wow.
Since I did that. And I remember the way my particular insurance company handled it. We called him. We told him my son had taken driver's ed and he was going to be driving in Dad's car or whatever.
Yep.
Has that changed? And do other insurance companies, did they handle it differently, any of them?
They all kind of do. You really should be disclosing all household members, or at least giving a household member count. And that can include even toddlers. I mean, if you have 5 members of your household, some companies want to know that. It's not a big deal one way or the other necessarily. Where it's a bigger deal is those who have driver's licenses, those of driving age, whether they're in your house with their own insurance and own vehicle or not. It depends on the company as to whether you need to disclose them. I'm going to use Progressive as the example because they are the one that kind of makes me immediately go to their guidelines and rules. So with Progressive, let's say it's you and then a friend moves in. All right. So you've got a friend living with you and they've been with you for a while now, maybe over a half a year. They probably, even if they have their own insurance and their own vehicle, you probably should just disclose them as somebody in your household on your policy. Now, with Progressive, you can put them as a list only, meaning you have options to disclose them, as just being in the household. So list only, you could say, hey, they have their own insurance. The reason why Progressive wants to know that and why other companies like Progressive want to know that is because what if that person has a really bad driving record? What if that person has DUI history? What if that person has something pretty significant? That can be a concern for a company because they're in your household and really at any particular time could be borrowing your vehicle. So, there was some level of concern there on a company standpoint. But ideally, the best practice is if you have people living in your household, whether they are driving your vehicles or not, if they are of age to be licensed, most companies really would love to have their names and dates of birth and license numbers, and you can just list them with the company. It does vary from company to company. There are some companies that really have no clue or just don't care, and there are other companies that do. The biggest reason to consider this, though, Jeff, is exclusionary components of a policy, right? So undisclosed drivers on certain auto policies can lead to a claim not being covered. And like my commercial says, the worst time to find out how good your insurance is when loss occurs. Well, this is the time, right? So, back to you, though, with your son. What we see a lot is, people will call us and let us know that their son or daughter has gotten their permit. That's great. We can list them as a permitted operator on the policy. It will not impact premium because they're only a permitted operator. They're not licensed. It doesn't change until they're licensed. But you really should disclose to your insurance carrier when your child is of permitted age. Actually, when they get their permit, I should say, not when they're of permitted age, but when they've gotten their permit from the state. And typically with the state of Vermont anyway, whatever the permit number is typically just rolls into whatever the license number is going to be once they have their license. So it's an 8-character, license number or permit number. You just give that and their date of birth and name, and you're good to go.
Okay, so here's what happened with me.
Sure. Oh,
all right.
Story time.
Yep. So my son, his mom and I separated. Mm-hmm. She got remarried. They have a couple of great kids. They're happy together. Her husband's a great dad, and so on and such forth. When that happened, I took my son off my driver's license.
Or your insurance policy, you mean?
My insurance policy. Yep. So one day we were getting ready to bring him back to Mom's. He'd come over and visit for the weekend. He had his permit. I tossed him the keys. I said, why don't you go down and back the car out? I'm going to pour a cup of coffee, like he'd done a couple of weeks before.
Sure.
Goes down, backs the car out of the garage, knocks on the door, white as a ghost, I just wrecked the car, Dad.
What?
While he was backing out of the garage, it was a snowy night.
Yeah.
He hooked the front of the bumper on the door casing, tore the plastic front off the car.
Oh, man.
I didn't have him on my insurance.
Did that cause a problem at the time? It might have.
I had to fix it myself.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate that does happen. But that's the biggest thing is, and honestly, at that point, I would have fought it, Jeff. Be honest with you, because you're in a situation where you are a separated couple, right? So mom is elsewhere than you, and you both have auto insurance policies. Junior only needs to be listed on one. You could also list Junior as being a insured elsewhere person on your policy to be absolutely safe, but certainly something to consider. So yeah, it's all about proper disclosure. Some companies, the straight and narrow is the way to go, because anytime you try to deviate, whether it be for a cost saving measure or things of that nature, maybe you decide I'm not going to list my kids on my policy and pray to God they don't need to be on there. Or I've even had people tell me, my insurance agent told me that I don't need to list my kids unless they get in an accident. Woohoo! Don't do that. That scares me. That's the stuff that keeps me up at night. My dad got into the insurance industry 3 years before I became of licensed age to drive a vehicle. And dang it, he learned way too much in those 3 years, because it was not a pretty scene when I turned 16 in my household. I'll tell you for sure. So,
well, one of the reasons I didn't with my car is it was a $700 car.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyways.
So in the end, it was okay. But
so you answered the question. Different companies handle it differently. And if folks have more questions on it or other questions, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, the best thing you can do, and you can always get in touch with us, absolutely. But get in touch, in this situation where if you have a question, get in touch with your agent or get in touch with your company, however you happen to be insured, because that disclosure is not a bad thing. But you can always give us a call, 748-5224. Find us on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury, online, thebarrettagency.com. Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency.
Thank you so much, my friend. And we're going to go back to music here. I will see you in a week, okay?
Sounds like a plan.
Up next, the latest from Taylor Swift on Magic